Coming in as the first entry on our list at number 10, we've got to go with Kuin, the teenage alien clone. During a misadventure that saw Wolverine stranded on a planet at the edge of the cosmos, far away from any other X-Men or Avengers, he found himself coming face to face with a young boy that seemed to share his exact power set, including an adamantium skeleton. Named Kuin, this boy is eventually revealed to have been created by an alien race that worships Wolverine and sees him as a missing link needed to create the ultimate being. Unfortunately, it's also implied that the cloning process was imperfect and that the adamantium attached to Kuin's bones might not be able to grow with the rest of his body, leaving this story just as tragic as it is odd. Coming in at number 9, we have Jimmy Hudson, the son of Ultimate Wolverine. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, things weren't looking too hot. Magneto had gone off the deep end and murdered a large portion of both the world population and the entirety of the X-Men, even killing Wolverine with a blast powerful enough to rip the adamantium off his bones. Following this universe-changing event, a young boy named Jimmy Hudson was gifted a post-death holographic message from Wolverine revealing himself to be the kid's father. With the same healing factor and claws as his dad, along with the ability to change what substance his claws are actually made of, Jimmy Hudson was an ideal candidate as the X-Men looked to reform after the death of so many members. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with Torrent. On the alternate world of Earth 9811, the planet was never reverted back from being a patchwork of different realities named Battleworld, and led to many superheroes deciding to settle down on this new plane of existence. Born to Wolverine and Storm, Torrent was a hot-tempered young mutant who possessed both the power to manipulate the weather and heal back from any injury, an incredibly powerful combo that meant she had little to fear when summoning some trademark lightning. Joining a new team of X-Men determined to wipe the robotic Sentinels off their new home, Torrent is definitely a mutant you do not want to mess with.
Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new vampire king. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable. Number 5. Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for Sure. Number 4. Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, damn. Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3. Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2. General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's Expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god-on-mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banish the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, it's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around Old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than Old King Thor himself.
Number 10. Howlett. Howlett is another one of my favorite Wolverine alternates. He hails from Earth 12025, known for being his own home universe. That's how popular he is. That's how we know what that universe is, just based on this one character. He was created by Greg Pak and Mike McCone, and made his first appearance in 2004's Astonishing X-Men in issue number 44. In this reality, James Howlett becomes the Governor General of Canada, serving both the Queen of England and Canada. He often teams up with the Hercules of this reality, and the two even have a romantic relationship together. Tragically, their romance initially had to be kept a secret because both of the people they served, the Queen and Zeus in Hercules' case, banned them from being in a relationship together, each for their own different reasons, and even when they did reveal their love, there was hell to pay.
In at 9, Old Man Logan. 50 years later, Logan lives with his wife Maureen, his son Scotty, and his daughter Jade on a plot of land in Sacramento of what used to be California, but is now a part of Hulkland, and no, that's not an amusement park. He requires money to pay his rent to his landlords for his territory, his landlords being the descendants of Bruce Banner, you know, the Hulk gang, who are the product of just a messed up procreation situation. I don't think I can say the actual words on YouTube, but you get what I'm saying. He refuses to sell his children's toys to pay for rent, so Logan is shown as just, you know, a broken man who refuses to fight, even though, you know, he definitely could. He's living peacefully, but then when he realizes he's unable to pay, that's when the Hulk gang will not accept a plea deal to pay double next month. So yeah, considering how they're inappropriately and without permissionly conceived children of Hulk and She-Hulk, which is Bruce's cousin, you know that this isn't going to go well. They confront him on his lack of payment, violently beat him, and then just, oh god, it's such a messed up story. Logan entertains visions of gutting the eldest Hulk brother Otis as he takes the beating, but yeah, the Hulk gang later kills his family, so Logan kills all the Hulk gang. It's a messed up version, but pretty iconic, but still, yikes. What the hell, Marvel? God, don't put this in the MCU. Thank God this wasn't a what if episode. Jeez.
Number 8, 1602. King James is the alternate version of Wolverine that exists in the 1602 reality, or rather the 1602 reality as it exists in God Emperor Doom's Battle World, which appeared during the 2015 Secret Wars event. This version of Wolverine also has claws like his comic book counterpart, but is a villain instead of a hero. He is one of the witch breed that Sarah and Angela hunt down, with Charles Xavier taking over for James after he is defeated.
Number 7, Lobo. Lobo is a really interesting character as he was originally created as a joke. He was meant to be a parody of the gritty anti-heroes who were becoming so popular in the 90s by being a ridiculously buff space bounty hunter who would say goofy tough stuff, and it was just meant to be a big old goofy joke. One of the characters who was a main source of inspiration, according to one of its creators, Roger Slipher, was Wolverine, with his tendency to drink beer, constantly talk about how edgy and tough he was, and always talking about how he was the best there is at what he does. And what he does isn't very nice. Lobo also has a powerful healing factor, but that's neither here nor there. What the creators at DC Comics didn't anticipate was that the readers wouldn't take the character as a joke and would genuinely love the main man. Not once to look a gift horse in the mouth, DC quickly expanded the character to give him his own identity and gave him his own series of books. Number 6, Wild Child. First appearing in Alpha Flight number 1, Wild Child was created by John Byrne to be little more than a Wolverine-like character. Like Wolverine and Sabretooth, who isn't on this list as he was created to be a foil to Wolverine as opposed to a copy, Kyle Gibney has an animalistic nature as well as a healing factor and razor-sharp claws. Due to his freakish appearance, he was shunned by humanity until he was found by Department H, who made him a member of the Alpha Flight training program, Gamma Flight. When Alpha Flight had its funding pulled by the government and went independent, members of Beta and Gamma Flight were recruited by the evil Jerome Jackson to be members of the evil Omega Flight, who tried to defeat Alpha on 2 separate occasions in John Byrne's original run on the comics. When John Byrne left the book to work on the Incredible Hulk series, Wild Child was just a Wolverine-esque villain who had never really been an issue for the Alphas to defeat, but he was further developed by subsequent writers to be a more unique character, eventually joining the hero team and becoming Weapon Omega and dating fellow teammate Aurora. His morality has shifted quite a bit over the years, with him being a member of the Hellions, X-Factor, Weapon X, and becoming a good foil for Wolverine to fight rather than a throwaway copy he was originally intended to be. Number 5, Killraiser. Honestly, I feel like the motto of Image Comics in the 90s for the most part was, what if we took this character and then made them extreme? I mean, Spawn is undeniably cool and original as a character, but a lot of the characters sometimes feel like everything that was whack about comics in the 90s and turned to 11. Look at Killraiser for instance. He is a mute character who has sharp claws that come out of his gauntlets that he uses to fight and brutally tear to shreds his enemies, but then they took it the extra mile. This is how I think the pitch meeting went for this character. Dude, what if Wolverine had more claws? You mean, dude, like claws that come out of his feet as well? Nah, dude, what if Wolverine was just claws? Dude, what do you mean? I mean, what if he was mute so we never had to develop him as a character, and instead of being a dude that just has claws, he was just a dude made of claws, coming out of every part of his body. Dude, that's awesome. Number 4. Pantha. In one of the more brazen acts of copying the editor of New Titans in the 90s, Jonathan Tierson wanted to make the Titans more like the X-Men. Rather than taking, say, the element of using a superhero story as a metaphor for prejudice or introducing the more convoluted relationships between characters of the universe to tell long, overarching stories, they decided to take this not literally and make some characters that were more like popular characters from the Marvel team, one of which was Rosabelle Mendez, otherwise known as Pantha or X-24, was a woman with cat-like abilities and claws who had a mysterious past she knew next to nothing about. She was subjected to experiments that granted her abilities, and she had to control her animal-like rage lest she lose control and scratch up everyone around her. Beyond that, the blue and yellow bodysuit with a yellow animal-like mask makes Pantha a pretty clear Wolverine ripoff. Of course, with the designation X-24, you might be forgiven for assuming she was a ripoff of Marvel's Laura Kinney, otherwise known as X-23. But Pantha does actually predate her by over a decade, with Pantha first appearing in the early 1991 and X-23 first appearing in late 2003. Number 3. Wolveroach. Cerebus was a comic book series that starred an aardvark named Cerebus, who works as a barbarian. The series was originally intended to be a parody of Marvel's take on the Conan the Barbarian series, but over time became an odd hodgepodge of experimental explorations of religion, gender, and politics. It had a large cast of characters, many of whom were clear parodies of iconic superheroes, but one of the more egregious ones was the Cockroach, who over the course of the story took on various superhero identities such as Moon Roach, Punisher Roach. However, the one that got the most attention was Wolveroach. As you can see, he was basically just Wolverine. The character's role in the story was to be a character who had an almost religious fervor about him, intended to parody the oversaturation of Wolverine in the comics at the time. As Dave Sim put it himself in an interview for Comics Journal in 1996, when it came time to do a Roach character that had the ambience of religious fervor surrounding him, it had to be Wolverine. The fact that Marvel got so upset about me putting Wolverine on the successive covers, it's not a parody, you are now stealing the central icon of our church. Well, there you go, yes, I picked the right one. I didn't realize I was going to be putting my foot in this badly. I thought parody's parody, but you can take the chalice they called Captain America and do a parody of that. You can take the subaltern and do Moon Knight, but by God, don't you touch our Wolverine. That's the center of our church. As you can tell, Dave had very strong feelings about how popular Wolverine was and seems to also be kind of a weird dude. Number 2. Ripclaw. Cyberforce was originally intended to be a spin-off series of X-Men and X-Force, before eventually ending up at Image Comics rather than Marvel. It makes sense that a few of the characters would bear some similarities to members of the various mutant teams. The character that clearly riffs on Wolverine is Ripclaw. Actually, a good rule of thumb, if a character has the word claw in his name, there's a 70% chance that they are a Wolverine knockoff, as you can tell from all the other parts on this list. Ripclaw got his abilities after the spirits of his ancestors left him the mystical power to take on animal-like abilities, which is nice for him. I mean, all I got from my ancestors was the ability to burn in the sun and a history of heart disease. Ripclaw was then captured by the evil Cyberdata Corporation, who brainwashed him and gave him cybernetic enhancements such as razor-sharp claws. He has a tendency to snap into an animal-like rage, and he has also got a healing factor. Wolverine. He's basically Wolverine. But in at number 1 is Deadlock. Another Image Comics character, John Locke was an ordinary lowlife until he had a heart attack and died. He was taken to the shady science group known as Project Born Again, who discovered that he had a latent mutant gene, and they resurrected him, driving him completely insane in the process. He went on a rampage before being eventually taken out and resurrected again and assigned to be a member of the superhero team Bloodstrike. Just by looking at him, the Wolverine influence is pretty clear, with the fangs, the claws, and the mask that is exactly like Wolverine's, just a different color. It always baffles me when characters that are this similar to the characters they are ripping off of are created. Like, yeah, Wolverine was huge in the 90s, but if you create a character that is this this similar, don't you realize that most people are just gonna be like, man, I'd rather just go buy a Wolverine comic?
At number 10 we have Weapon X Wolverine. First appearing in X-Men Alpha number 1, this version of Wolverine is missing one hand and fights in a Magneto-led version of the X-Men. It's hard to imagine Logan being even more grizzled than we're used to, but with face paint and a ton of built-up resentment about the whole missing hand situation, this version of the hero shows what age can do to a person, especially when you're creeping towards the ripe age of 300. Known as Weapon X in this future reality, this Wolverine soon becomes known as Weapon Omega, and to be fair, his anger isn't the only thing driving him to be more vicious than ever. This version of Wolverine is augmented by the Celestials and can only eventually be stopped by Jean Grey. At number 9 we have Counter-Earth Hawkeye. This could be contested whether or not he's from the future or just an alternate reality, but time is kinda hard to follow sometimes when dealing with interdimensional travel, so I'll leave this one up for debate. Regardless, it's a pretty unique version of Wolverine that I thought was worth mentioning. Franklin Richards writes a new version of Hawkeye in Onslaught Reborn number 1, who appears to be a different iteration than the one we're used to, and that's because behind the mask is actually Wolverine and not Clint Barton. On Counter-Earth, this version of Wolverine is part of the Avengers, and it seems to me that this alternate dimension is further along in its own timeline, allowing for Wolverine to possess some kind of magical ability brought on by Blastar the Living Bomb Burst. At number 8 is Phalanx Wolverine from the newer comic series X Deaths of Wolverine, released between January and March of 2022. This version of Wolverine travels into the future to save a being who is very important to the mutant race. And as he travels through time, he starts to envision memories from his past. Memories that he hadn't ever before been able to recall. One of the more significant of these lost memories is one where he was present during the birth of Charles Xavier, saving his family from Omega Red. This storyline uses a future version of Wolverine to remind us that this hero, being the most published in the history of Marvel Comics, has so much history that there is still new lore to be uncovered even in 2022. At number 7 we have Logan from Earth 1051-1, 10,511. Another iteration of Weapon X, this version of Wolverine appears in Wolverine Weapon X issue number 12 for just a brief moment. But in the short time that he appears, we get a glimpse into a whole new world where Wolverine has lost both his hands, replacing one of them with a hook. During a major battle in a distant future, he comes in to support his team with a big black beard and overgrown hair and a costume that seems entirely upgraded. He's got metal shoulder and chest pads with a utility belt, and he seems like, well, seems like he's been through a lot. He fights against Roxxon to take back the government, but is eventually, spoiler alert, killed by Deathlock. At number 6 we have James Howlett from Earth 96099. Only appearing very briefly, this future version of the hero is totally missing his arm after his battles with the Hulks, which seems like a theme, this whole no arm thing. But anyway, this time he's also totally bald as well. He decides to recruit a new X-Men team with a new race of mutants that he encounters in his future timeline. His goal is to rebuild Baltimore of all places after it is destroyed, along with much of civilization after a major war, but he also has to protect the world from an army of mindless Hulks who continue to act as the main threat in this storyline. At number 5 we have the Wolverine from Wolverine The End. This comic series is known to offer the reader a look into how these characters face, well, their ends. And in Wolverine's issues, we face what seems to be an even older and more grim version of an old man Logan. But for Wolverine, we're left with a cliffhanger instead of his death, suggesting that there will be even more future iterations of Logan and or James Howlett to come. In the final issue of this The End series, James faces off against his own older brother, John Howlett Jr. And as they duke it out in front of an audience of military personnel, James ends up accidentally killing his brother, driving his claws through his chest after a fall. After some epic final words are exchanged, we watch James sit in silence as it's suggested that he is apprehended by the authorities. But this isn't confirmed, that's actually where the series ends. This is definitely one of the more gothic and darker versions of Wolverine, and the dark epic storyline that this series explores really reflects how much Wolverine has been through over the years, even into the future. At number 4, we have Ultimate Cable. We all know that Cable is a time traveler and the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey. Well, on Earth 2107 this isn't the case. Instead, James Howlett takes on the mantle of Cable and sports a big scar across his face. This is from a battle taking place in the future where this Wolverine version of Cable, or vice versa, fights Apocalypse with the X-Men, and his arm is once again ripped off. When Apocalypse absorbs his healing factor, he uses the severed arm with the claws on it against Cable Wolverine and leaves a massive scar on the face. And since this and the dismemberment come after his healing power is taken away, these wounds remain. Luckily, this version of Wolverine has other abilities like Cable's and eventually finds a way to travel back in time 30 years to collect Professor X and try and right the wrongs of the future. At number 3 is Old Man Phoenix. First appearing in Marvel Legacy number 1, this version of Wolverine is, as you could imagine by the name, Old Man Logan possessing the Phoenix Force. Hailing from Earth 14412, this version of Logan basically mirrors that of 616 Logan, up until King Loki wipes out humankind. Logan is known to be dead under unknown circumstances, but is soon chosen to become the new host for the Phoenix Force and travels the universe destroying celestial bodies on his way. When he eventually encounters a future version of Loki, he goes back in time to undo the damage that Loki had done, letting go of the Phoenix Force in the process. And this is a request by Loki himself, after seeing something that changes his intentions for supreme power on a dime. This version of Wolverine is definitely the most powerful on the list, both in influence and sheer power. And he looks pretty badass as well, like an old angry wizard. Fire wizard. At number 2 we have Old Man Logan. Just good old Man Logan. Everyone knows this one. I wanted to put him higher on the list than his Phoenix Force counterpart because even though the previous entry is more powerful, Old Man Logan is just more iconic. Old Man Logan first appears in Fantastic Four number 558, but is most well known for his own self-titled series. In this future, Logan has a family but is in constant fear for his life, as most of the world is ruled by supervillains. Most superheroes are dead this far into the future, and with his family on the line, he becomes a driven father and husband, packing a punch even more powerful now that it's driven by love and the fear that comes with it. After he raises enough money to protect his family from the Hulk gang, which is a thing in the future I guess, the gang kills his family anyway, leaving Old Man Logan with only one choice: to kill the original Hulk then and there. He is then integrated into the mainstream Marvel Universe after the events of Secret Wars. At number 1, we have the Days of Future Past Wolverine, or Wolverine from Earth 811. On Earth 811, this version of Wolverine lives in a time 33 years ahead of the modern 616 version. And when the Watcher from Earth 9997 looks into Logan's past, he unveils that Logan's past isn't quite as it seemed. Instead of being born sometime in the 1800s and tested on in a lab, X-51 finds that he had actually descended from a tribe of humans known as the Moon People. In this future storyline, he's faced with the task of protecting the mutant race after the Mutant Control Act is put into effect, and Sentinels are ordered as the protectors of America. After a few search and rescue missions, Wolverine joins the Resistance and fights with his mutant comrades, including Magneto, to defeat the Sentinels. In this reality, Wolverine has all the same powers as the 616 version, but he does have access to the Watcher's transportation devices as well on Earth's moon, which could transport him anywhere on Earth instantly. At number 10 is Feral Wolverine. This version of the hero is not given added power by any upgrades or magical augmentation, but by his own sheer will to cause harm. What happens is that Wolverine's adamantium is ripped out by Magneto through the pores of his skin, which is, of course, very painful and traumatic. So he gets extremely angry and loses all control as he's thrown into a blind rage to get revenge on Magneto. But aside from Wolverine's pain-driven fury, Magneto actually activates a new mutation that he didn't know was being held back by the adamantium in Wolverine. And this mutation basically turns him into an animalistic version of himself that is closer to an untamed beast than his usual strategic and tactically aware self. The only downside of this version of Wolverine is that he's so unhinged that he's not able to control any strategic approach to battle. At number 9 is Helverine. When the Red Right Hand sets their sights on Wolverine, acting on their strange grudge against him
specifically, they banish Logan's soul and replace it with that of a demon. So, a demonic version of Wolverine is created and makes the superhero even more powerful, sending him into a demonic rage, killing many of Logan's friends in one bloody frenzy. It takes a lot of effort for the X-Men to finally subdue Wolverine, requiring the whole team alongside Jean Grey as well as Logan's own soul to battle the demon out of Wolverine's body for good. This version of Wolverine shows how strong it is in a very short time, leaving Logan's friends and us readers alike hoping that the Red Right Hand will finally just leave Logan alone. At number 8 is Laura Kinney. Laura Kinney is the result of a top secret program that makes an effort to create another Wolverine. But when they can't find a subject to survive the process of bonding the adamantium to their bones, they decide to just clone Logan himself. But during this process, the Y chromosome is damaged and they instead create a female clone that they call X-23. She only has the 2 claws on either hand, but that typically isn't a hindrance for her since she does get empowered by the Enigma Force a number of times. And if you're not already aware, the Enigma Force is what gives Captain Universe his power. So Laura is really not to be messed with. She's also just a great fighter on her own, and she eventually escapes the lab and becomes a very successful hero by her own right.
In its 7, Ultimate Wolverine. In this reality, Wolverine suffers from amnesia, and as a result, there's little known about his early life, but what is known is both suspect and unverifiable. It is believed that at one point, Wolverine had a wife and child, but they were supposedly killed by Sabretooth. As both Wolverine and Sabretooth's memories have been tampered with in this past timeline, this claim is suspect. However, if both of their memories were altered, maybe it does have some validity. Wolverine did own a wedding ring that serves as his only link to his past, not the game. That's a whole other thing, that's a different channel. But this version of Wolverine has the healing factor, disease resistance, toxin resistance that, damn, I wish I had 2 years ago. Extended longevity, superhuman senses, the stamina. The ladies love him because of that too. He has that agility, the reflexes, the classic adamantium laced skeleton and retractable claws. He's experienced in hand-to-hand combat. He's an expert assassin. He can lift 800 pounds. Like, bro, come on, can you even lift? Spider-Man lifts twice that when he's taking it easy, okay? And that's not even in the symbiote suit, which I guess technically doesn't count and doesn't exactly exist. But you know what, let's ignore that. He's still cool.
Number 6, The Punisher. In the What If Wolverine one-shot issue number 1 from 2005, here we get to imagine what the world might have been like had Wolverine become Punisher instead of Frank Castle. The story is set a bit in the past and imagines what it would be like if Logan had lost his family and sought revenge. In this version of the tale, Wolverine goes up against Scarface, who has Logan's family killed. His wife in this universe is Silver Fox, and together the two had a son. Scarface also might be a character that you'll actually recognize from the main Marvel universe here. He's an alternate version of Logan's half-brother Dog, who you may know from the Wolverine origin story and comic series.
Halfway through into number 5, Wild Thing. On Earth 982, Rena was the new girl at a high school where some of the more popular girls tried to make her life miserable because, you know, it's high school. Stating that she was the daughter of an immigrant and an unemployed biker, but her father is Logan. You know, Wolverine. So he picked her up from school on his bike, and opinions changed about her. Because, you know, yeah. Especially when they learned that her mother, Elektra, was a wealthy martial arts expert. Gotta love high school. However, life at high school wasn't just about dealing with the crowd, because as Wild Thing, Rena had to save a classmate from a high-speed kidnapper, defeat a computerized assassin, stop a demonic invader, and even fight one of her teachers when he was turned into a prime sentinel. Yeah, jeez. That's just high school. Another Sky High reference for those that are keeping track. Rena first appeared in J2 number 5 in 1998 and was created by Ron Lim and Tom DeFalco, even if technically she was created by Logan and Elektra, if you get the joke.
Number 4, Albert. I love Albert. He is the android alternate of Wolverine who was designed by Donald Pierce. Remember him? I remember him. Pierce created Albert along with LCD as part of a plan to trap Wolverine and have him destroyed. Fortunately for Wolverine, LCD was given the wrong level of sort of a logic machine in her mind and managed to find a way around her and Albert being used as such, ultimately freeing Albert and LCD in the end of their obligation to kill Logan. Albert was given his name by LCD after Albert Einstein, who she compared his his intelligence to after she severely upgraded him all by herself.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Wolverine Pool. Wade Wilson from Earth TRN 1946 was bonded with adamantium through his skeleton by the Weapons Plus program. He was later recruited by Deadpool or Dreadpool for his army, and he killed Deadpool Pulp before the arrival of Galactipool. I wish that this was a joke. He was attacked by Deadpool with a grenade from which bugs and other it ate all of his flesh, leaving behind only his skeleton and his claws, which was seemingly the same as Earth 616's Wolverine's skeleton and claws, but like it's a Deadpool. It's Deadpool in Wolverine's body. That also has the same scarring that regular Deadpool has. Wolverine Pool's healing factor is most likely weaker than 616 Wolverine or Deadpool's healing factor, which makes him less dangerous, but come on, okay? A combination of Wolverine and Deadpool is something that we should all fear, and most likely do, but I'm surprised Deadpool didn't make this a thing at the end of Deadpool 2 when he was correcting everything that he had done wrong. He should have done this, that would have been funny.
Number 2, Talon. Laura Kinney is obviously one of my favorite versions of the Wolverine character, and she herself has also technically been Wolverine. Initially known as X-23, Laura was actually created to be a clone of Logan. Her mother, Sarah Kinney, initially tried to create a clone of Logan, but was unsuccessful due to the Y chromosome being damaged. Instead, she attempted to compensate for this by using some of her own genetic material to supplement the parts of the genetic sequence that were basically damaged and missing, creating a female clone instead. It worked, but her work was damaged by her rival, Dr. Xander Rice, forcing Sarah to become a surrogate for the clone if she wanted to save her work. Sarah did just that, and X-23 was born. For years, X-23 was raised to be only a weapon, but eventually, after the members of the program turned on each other, she was able to secure her freedom. Unfortunately, along with her freedom came loss. Loss of her purpose in the world, and loss of the few people involved in the program who had genuinely cared for her, including her mother, Sarah, who named Laura with her last dying breath. Later, Laura would go on to track down Wolverine and attempt to kill him, seeing herself and her genetic father as nothing more than deadly and dangerous weapons. However, through meeting Logan, X-23 also found a sense of family, and eventually would even come to join the X-Men team. And I mean, spoiler alert, she doesn't end up killing Wolverine, in case you didn't know. Currently, she goes by the codename of Talon.
And finally, in at number 1, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is obviously a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. I'm sorry, dude, Alberta sucks. His uncle was a member of the RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for those of you who use the Imperial system, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force. I don't know if they have an acronym, but it just felt right. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, which was a Canadian super soldier program, and then from there it's kind of the same thing. His bones were bonded to adamantium, and he discovered that he was a meta-mutant, which is just the meta-mutants in this dimension, but yeah, it's Batman and Wolverine, okay? He has all the powers of Logan and a clawcopter and clawmobile. That's awesome. I want this in the MCU. If they're fixing the DCEU so that we can do this, that would be great.
In at number 10 is Popclaw. The Boys television show and the comics that inspired it are filled with characters that are meant to stand in for more well-known and beloved superheroes in an effort to tell a story about what superpowered beings might be like in the real world. Homelander is obviously meant to be Superman. The Deep is clearly a play on Aquaman, and Queen Maeve is very much Wonder Woman. One of the more minor characters to appear in both the comics and the TV show is Popclaw. Popclaw is a woman whose name is rather self-explanatory. She has claws that pop out of her arms with which she attacks her enemies. She's less one-to-one with Wolverine than other characters in the franchise are with their heroes that inspired them, but the influence is clearly there in aesthetic if nothing else. More comic-savvy fans will probably say she is more similar to X-23, and the creator of the character, Gareth Ennis, has said that she is actually inspired more by Scandal Savage, but for the more more casual viewer of the TV show, the first thought that will pop in their mind when they see Popclaw and her powers will be, oh, it's Wolverine. So for that reason, she will get the number 10 slot on this list. But in at number 9 is Seahawk. This character from Image Comics is really Mark Barrows, who was hunting for underwater artifacts with his family when one of the artifacts blew up, resulting in his father's death, but him and his brother being granted superpowers and becoming the heroes Seahawk and Cold Snap. He would go on to join the superhero team the Brigade, and overall isn't that much of a Wolverine knockoff. However, the fact that one of the powers granted to him was accelerated healing, and the fact that his look is kinda Logan-esque with the fangs and the pointy-eared mask makes me think that Wolverine was at least an influence on the character, and makes me comfortable putting him on the low end of this list. Number 8. Warblade. Warblade is an often forgot character that was created by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi for the DC Comics Wildstorm universe. Similar to what happened with Wolverine, Warblade was kidnapped and brainwashed so that he would be a member of an elite strike team known as the SHOC before breaking free of their control and joining a super team known as the Wildcats. Unlike Wolverine, he is not human and instead a Karen, an alien race who can shapeshift into a mercury-like substance. He can use this metal morphing ability to create claws, which he of course uses to attack his enemies. He is also a world-class martial artist with ties to Japan, but though he is clearly inspired by Wolverine, he is different enough to rank pretty low on this list as well.
Coming in at number 7, we have Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 98-2, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his father. So much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in the wonderful world of weird comic book family dynamics. Coming in at number 6, we've got to go with Wild Thing. Hailing from the same universe as her half-brother Saberclaw, this daughter of Wolverine and the ninja Elektra has managed to stay on the side of good and become a teenage superhero that would be notable even without famous parents. With increased speed, strength, and the ability to create claws out of pure psychic energy, Wild Thing is an incredibly powerful mutant that showcases the best influences of the X-Men and proves that even when the first generation is ready to retire, there'll always be an angry clawed mutant ready to protect the X-Men name. Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Raze Darkholme. Hailing from a dark alternate future where Wolverine and Mystique had a son, Raze is an even more powerful shapeshifter than his mother, with all of the bloodlust and rage of his father unleashed. Traveling to the main Marvel timeline and impersonating Kitty Pryde in order to get close enough to strike at his father, Raze planned to wipe out humanity in this reality in order to create a safe haven across the multiverse for all of mutant kind, and was willing to do anything and impersonate anyone to achieve it. Coming in at number 4, we've got to go with something a little more live action than the rest of these comic books, with X-24 from the movie Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine and was only able to be defeated by a bullet made of pure adamantium to the back of the head. Talk about overkill. Coming in at number 3, we have Hulk Jr. And no, I promise this didn't suddenly become a list about Bruce Banner's kids. In the alternate future that's often seen in stories involving Old Man Logan, Hulk Jr. is the last surviving grandson of Bruce Banner, and the last member of the infamous and cannibalistic Hulk Gang. Following their defeat by Wolverine, Logan decided to raise this young gamma-mutated child as a member of his own family. So, while the two might not be biologically related, Hulk Jr. grew into a heroic figure because of how he was raised, and would go on to start a new generation of heroes on this post-apocalyptic world, bringing some hope to a land filled with tragedy. Coming in at number 2, we have Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Created by the Weapon X project when they were attempting to remake the success of Wolverine with a genetic sample that had a damaged Y chromosome, Laura is otherwise a perfect clone of Logan in every way. While her early years were traumatic and occasionally brought her into conflict with Wolverine and the X-Men, in recent years she's actually taken up the name of Wolverine herself, living up to the title that's inspired mutants for generations and helping carve out a new place for mutant kind in a new world. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog or bastard, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a son. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter slashed open his stomach and left him to bleed to death. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world, and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life. In recent years though, Daken does seem to have found some sense of belonging on the island of Krakoa, and has recently become a member of the new X-Factor team. Let's hope he can catch a little bit of a break from his life being so angsty.
Number 10. Dirty Bomb Wolverine. Why does this sound like some sort of sexy nickname for Wolverine? It really is not. Instead, this alternate version of Wolverine is an empty clone that was created in the current Wolverine series and used to basically burn vampires loyal to Dracula from the inside out. This all went down in a battle in the effort of freeing Omega Red from Dracula's hold over him, while also getting back at Drac, who was attempting to get his hands on Wolverine so he could use his blood to allow his own vampire army to walk around during the day, making them obviously much more powerful. Omega Red's plan to stop Dracula was to give him what he wanted, which meant making a clone of Wolverine who was gene edited to have blood that was thick with photonic cells, similar to the ones found in plankton, which produce their own luminescence. Basically, the blood of the Dirty Bomb clone Wolverine then had the opposite effect on the vamps who consumed it, meaning they would be burnt from the inside out as opposed to being able to walk in the day. Having a gene-edited clone of Wolverine is a frightening prospect, and a clone who is used simply as a decoy and bomb is pretty morally scary. And then there is the added factor of how it made the vampires feel to learn of it. And I'm sure that they were properly terrified before they were all killed. Minus Dracula, of course, who got away in the end, like he always does. Although the mutants won the battle in issue number 12 of the current Wolverine series, they did not win the war. Still continues with the Vampire Nation. Number 9. Darkclaw. If you find the Batman scary, and I mean, who doesn't? He is often drawn with the intention of looking intimidating and scary enough to strike fear into the hearts of goons and villains all across Gotham. Then take a seat, because Darkclaw is definitely going to spook you a bit here. Darkclaw comes to us from the Amalgam universe, where he was created as a cross between Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman, blending together two of the big two's most popular and frightening heroic characters. He's got the backstory and fortune of Batman, but still boasts of the adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor of Wolverine, meaning that Logan Wayne is not an alternate version that you would want to mess with. And all my ghouls out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Wolverine lists, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button and commenting down below. Also, if you click like and if you smash subscribe, you can call me Vampy. Number 8. Phoenix. One of the most terrifying versions of Wolverine in terms of what he could be capable of has to be the Wolverine from the alternate future, where Thor ends up as Allfather and Loki wipes out all of humanity, just to make his brother suffer, of course. In this dystopian future, Wolverine himself ends up being chosen to become the new host for the Phoenix Force after his own death. Phoenix Logan was obviously capable of many different insane feats due to him being imbued with, well, the Phoenix Force, even managing to save Loki from the Celestials. Pretty impressive. However, Phoenix Wolverine would prove to be not quite as scary when facing a future version of Doom, who obliterated him. But Logan, being imbued with the power of the Phoenix Force, meant that he could resurrect, and in order to ensure that Doom would be defeated this time around, he sacrificed himself to empower Allfather Thor's weapon Mjolnir in the continued battle. Also, that would be the one really powerful Mjolnir. It's like Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. That's crazy.
At number 7 is Lord of
Vampires Wolverine. In What If number 24, Wolverine is bitten by Lord Dracula, which turns him into a vampire. And after some biting and killing as a blood-sucking ghoul, Wolverine decides he has to kill Lord Dracula and become the Lord of the Vampires himself. Then Wolverine goes and kills most of the X-Men, turning a few of them into vampires as well, and then controlling them and others with hypnosis. With his vampire army, he goes forth to take on all of New York City, and then eventually the world. It's a fun, quick issue that explores an interesting question in a what-if context, but if you really take the character seriously and consider his powers, Lord of Vampires Wolverine is a very powerful variant. Wolverine is already an extremely powerful superhero, but with the ability to turn others into mindless vampires and then control them with mind powers, he becomes nearly unstoppable. At number 6, we have Zombie Wolverine. This variant is, on its own, maybe not the most powerful out of them all, considering he's made up of decaying flesh. But due to circumstance, he actually ends up being a real issue for his friends and enemies alike. During a fight against the Silver Surfer, this version of Wolverine loses his right arm and actually has it replaced by a cybernetic one. Not only that, but Zombie Wolverine also gains cosmic powers after killing and then devouring the corpse of the Silver Surfer. So aside from an insatiable hunger as a driving force for this variant, he's also got the whole cosmic power thing on his side, as well as a nifty cybernetic arm. Beware of Zombie Wolverine, he means business. At number 5, we have Dark Claw. This is a fun one, but it's also arguably a very underestimated Wolverine variant, all things considered. For those of you who don't know Darkclaw, he's basically a combination between Wolverine and Batman. The Amalgam comics showed different heroes from the Marvel Universe merging with those of the DC Universe, and the result of Wolverine and Batman coming together is a pretty powerful new hero. There's not much more to report than the obvious, which is just that Wolverine and Batman's abilities are combined. But if you really think about it, there's only power gain for Wolverine in this amalgamation. With all the power that Wolverine already has, met with the innovative genius mind of Bruce Wayne, the possibilities for this variant are basically endless. At number 4, we have General James Howlett from Earth 12025. Appearing mostly in Volume 2 of Extreme X-Men, this highly decorated hero is known to be the most powerful in this reality. This version of Wolverine's bones are actually coated in adamantine, which is a mystical metal that comes from the ancient Greek gods of Olympus. The metal keeps him immune from telepathy, and it's also known to be more powerful than adamantium. Adamantine, adamantium. They're different. Adamantium, of course, being the one that the original Wolverine relies on. The adamantine is so strong that it even keeps Wolverine safe from attacks from Thor's hammer. Plus, this guy has some pretty cool titles attached to his name and is an explorer working for the government of Canada. So he just seems like a cool dude on top of everything else. Did I say dude? I meant god. He's basically a god. At number 3, we have Weapon H. So this variant is the result of what happens when you mix together Wolverine and the Hulk into one guy. And what you get is a superpowered Hulk with an adamantium skeleton and of course the retractable claws. But he still has the ability to switch back to his human form on command despite his frame being coated in the metal. The only downside for this variant that I could think of is the same thing that gives the Hulk a disadvantage. His rage can sometimes be too much for him to handle, keeping him from making sound tactical decisions at times. But regardless, the sheer power that this variant holds is enough, as Dr. Alba theorizes, to kill every living thing on Earth. This is a relatively new character, so I'm interested to see where he goes. I guess we'll all see. At number 2, we have Weapon Omega. Aside from just looking pretty cool, Weapon Omega is undoubtedly one of the most powerful variants of Wolverine in any reality. This guy has all the powers of Wolverine with the added abilities of Apocalypse. So yes, he's basically immortal and can teleport, and also use mind control, shift in size on command, and fly. Not to mention the huge blaster that's replaced one of his claw arms, and the crazy armor that he's got equipped at all times as well. Also remember, he's still got his healing abilities, even if someone did get close enough to do any damage on this guy, which I doubt is a very easy feat to accomplish, and sort of pointless considering he never dies. Weapon Omega eventually takes over for Apocalypse as leader of the Horsemen, solidifying his position as one of the most powerful variants of Wolverine in his political influence as well. Finally, at number 1, I'm putting Phoenix Force Wolverine, because there's really no comparing Phoenix Force to any other entity in terms of power, at least as far as Wolverine variants go. When possessed by Phoenix Force, Wolverine has the ability to manipulate matter at will, as well as warping reality and the fabric of the multiverse. Not to mention, if he wanted to, he could do what Dark Phoenix does and gain more power by consuming the energy of stars throughout the cosmos, if he so chooses. It's almost like his adamantium claws don't really add any extra gusta to his power set at this point, because instead of taking a stab at someone, he could just, you know, think about them being a pile of ashes and it would happen. He's such a powerful variant that he eventually reigns over the cosmos in a future alternate reality, something that old King Thor observes for himself. So yeah, Phoenix Force Wolverine at number 1.
Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slow aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M Wolverine. Now to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a SHIELD operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste.
At number 7 is Cancerverse Wolverine. Cancerverse Wolverine is a denizen of Earth 10011, remains a shadowy figure in the Marvel Universe. In this eerie reality known as the Cancerverse, the Grim Reaper has been utterly obliterated, and in the absence of the unalive, paradoxically, it gave birth to a cosmic nightmare. Cancerverse Wolverine's appearance alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. In a world where mortality is non-existent, life spirals into a grotesque spectacle, a chilling reflection of the importance of balance in the universe. Because in this twisted realm, even a hero like Wolverine becomes a harbinger of terror, a reminder that the natural order of things, no matter how unsettling, always has its rightful place. At number 6 is Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is a haunting iteration of Wolverine, emerging from Earth 807128. In this chilling reality, the claws of tragedy run deep. See, Logan was once a hero who now carries the crushing weight of guilt upon his adamantium-laced shoulders. Mysterio's sinister dissipation led him down a path of unwitting euthanization organization, annihilating his fellow X-Men. Time catapults us into a future where Logan has abandoned his iconic alias, opting simply for his first name to escape the specter of his past. But destiny refuses to release his grip. Logan attempts to evade heroics, settling into a family life, yet peril relentlessly pursues him. When the ruthless Hulk gang eliminates his loved ones over the late protection money, Logan's dormant savagery ignites. The descent into vengeance becomes an inescapable plunge, culminating in a gory reckoning that liberates his world from the clutches of the deranged Pappy Banner and his nightmarish clan. In the desolate landscape of Old Man Logan's reality, even heroes succumb to darkness, making it one of the most spine-tingling alternate Wolverines in the multiverse. And at number 5, my personal favorite is Old Man Venom. Enter the Venomverse, where unimaginable transformations await. In this universe, we get to see Old Man Logan devoured by a venom-infested T-Rex. But here's the twist. The symbiote decides that Logan is a superior host and merges with him. The result is Venom Wolverine, or as I like to call him, Old Man Venom, a character oozing with insanity, ethics thrown out the window, and an utter disregard for consequences. Sure, he might have a laundry list of symbiote vulnerabilities, making him marginally less formidable than your typical regenerating Logan, but the sheer terror he instills is undeniable. Venom Wolverine is a monstrous fusion of two iconic characters, delving into a spine-tingling combination of ferocity and chaos. Next time you delve into alternate realities, keep an eye out for this hair-raising incarnation of Wolverine. At number 4 is Wolverine Noir. In the shadowy realms of this alternate universe, we stumble upon Jim Logan, a character shrouded in mystery and intrigue. This noir iteration of Wolverine takes us on a journey through the Marvel Noirverse, offering a distinctive twist on the iconic mutant. In this iteration, Logan isn't a berserker on the battlefield, but a detective navigating the murky waters of crime. It's a fitting role for a man with heightened senses and a knack for tracking. Wolverine Noir paints a gritty picture of reminiscent of classic noir films, amplifying the eerie ambience that defines this universe. This version delves into Wolverine's past, mirroring the harrowing narrative from his origin series. Raised by a fervently religious father, Jim's childhood is the haunting tale of sermons and strife, shaping his path into the detective he becomes. So while we've seen Logan in countless forms, Jim Logan's chilling incarnation stands out as one of the most intriguing and unsettling alternate versions of this iconic character. At number 3 is Phoenix Wolverine. In the realm of eerie alternate Wolverines, the incarnation known as Phoenix Logan takes a chilling spot on our list. Picture a grim future where Thor ascends to the All-Father status and Loki, the ever-malevolent trickster, decimates humanity just to torment his brother. In this apocalyptic landscape, Wolverine, after his own demise, becomes a new vessel for the awe-inspiring Phoenix Force. With this cosmic power coursing through his adamantium-laced veins, Wolverine exhibits an array of mind-bending abilities, even at one point going as far as to save Loki from the formidable Celestials. However, the terror takes on a different twist when a future iteration of Dr. Doom crosses this Wolverine's path, obliterating him. Yet thanks to the Phoenix Force, his demise is merely a minor setback. To secure Dr. Doom's defeat, Logan willingly sacrifices himself, channeling his power through Thor's mighty Mjolnir in the relentless battle. At number 2 is Akihiro. Akihiro, also known as Daken or Fang, is a chilling alternate version of Wolverine. During the Dark Reign storyline, when Norman Osborn took control of the comics, Daken emerges as a sinister counterpart. See, Osborn had formed Hammer and the Dark Avengers, a team comprised of rebranded villains as Avengers replacements. While Osborn attempted to recruit original Avengers, most of them declined. Daken, however, joined as Dark Wolverine. Akihiro might not currently be villainous, but during that time, he was a bona fide baddie. What makes him terrifying in the series is his lack of a moral code, even compared to his father, who isn't known for his strength. Daken, like Wolverine, is a highly skilled fighter and assassin, groomed from childhood to be a lethal weapon for Romulus against Logan. This alternate version of Wolverine is a dark reflection of the iconic hero. And at number 1 is Dark Claw. Dark Claw, a fusion of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman from the Amalgam Universe, is undeniably one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine. Imagine the brooding intensity of Batman mixed with the raw, animalistic ferocity of Wolverine. It's a chilling combination, and Dark Claw inherits Bruce Wayne's wealth and tragic backstory, ensuring that he's a complex and deeply haunted character. But what truly sets him apart is his adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor borrowed from Wolverine, obviously. This mending of two iconic cosmic, fear-inducing heroes creates a formidable force. Darkklaw embodies the fear of the night, blending the relentless pursuit of justice with the untamed power of Wolverine's regenerative abilities and his claws. Crossing paths with Logan Wayne would send shivers down anyone's spine. At number 10 is X-24. In the dark and twisted multiverse of comic book adaptations, we've seen our fair share of alternate versions of our beloved characters, but in the film Logan, this sinister creation was engineered to be the ultimate unaliving machine, a nightmarish mirror image of Wolverine himself. Unlike the brooding and complex Logan we know, X-24 is a ruthless berserker devoid of any moral compass. See, he wasn't played by inner demons or a sense of duty. He was a pure force of destruction. And what made him even more terrifying was his relentless pursuit of Laura, or X-23, who shared Wolverine's blood. Every time X-24 appeared on screen, a wave of anxiety washed over myself, knowing that this unrelenting monster would stop at nothing to achieve its grisly objectives. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 9 is Zombieverse Wolverine. In the eerie expanse of the multiverse, we stumble upon a spine-chilling variant of Wolverine, who's a zombie. Venture into Earth Z, or Earth 2149, a nightmarish realm in which this gruesome iteration, Wolverine's fate, takes a sinister twist as he, along with a select other few heroes, feast upon the remains of the cosmic entity Galactus. But it doesn't stop there. The unholy banquet bestows upon zombie Wolverine the dreaded power cosmic. Damn, picture it. The relentless savagery of Wolverine as a zombie, fueled with the limitless might of the cosmos. It's a ghastly unison that transforms Logan into a nightmarish force, a walking apocalypse with claws and a cosmic energy at his disposal. This incarnation of Wolverine sends shivers down the spine, reminding us that within the multiverse, terror knows no bounds. At number 8 is the Lord of the Vampires. This spine-chilling incarnation of Logan emerged from the pages of the What If series, specifically in Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, a fateful turn of events sees Storm choosing to stay by Dracula's side during the X-Men's clash with the infamous Vampire Lord. The consequences were world-altering, as Wolverine and his fellow heroes fell victim to capture and transformation. Yet the adamantium-laced warrior's indomitable will proved way too powerful for Dracula's control. In a gruesome twist, Wolverine overcame the Vampire Lord, seizing the throne and becoming the new Lord of the Vampires. Picture Wolverine with fangs, ruling over legions of bloodsuckers, and capable of enslaving anyone with a single bite. It's a nightmarish blend of clawed ferocity and a moral bloodlust that would haunt even the most fearless of souls.
Number 7, Akahiro. Sure, Daken is a character all his own, but I also counted a clone that was used as a dirty bomb against vampires, so I feel like if I do that, it would be really insulting if we did not talk about Akahiro. Daken was an alternate version of Wolverine during Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn basically took over in the comics, where he forged the organization Hammer and his very own Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were made up of former and current villains repurposed and remarketed as Avengers replacements. Osborn actually tried to recruit some of the original Avengers after they'd been disbanded, but of course they pretty much all refused. They were like, we know you're Norman Osborn, so. Daken was recruited to be Dark Wolverine on the team, and while Akahiro might not be quite as villainous in the comics currently, at the time, he was still pretty much one of the baddies. Daken is a terrifying alternate because he has less of a moral code than his dad, who already isn't known for his light touch when it comes to dealing with his opponents. Daken, like his father, is also a skilled fighter and assassin who was trained since he was a child to become a killer and a weapon for Romulus to use against Logan. Oh, and if you're not familiar with him, he also has pretty much all the powers of his dad. His claws are just a little bit different. Actually, Daken also has pheromone powers, so he's not really more powerful than his dad in terms of skill, but power set, just saying. Number 6, Wolverine Noir. Jim Logan is one of the noir versions of Wolverine that we see in the Marvel Noirverse. Another shows up in the X-Men Noir series, but with a different backstory and also kind of a different name. He's a bootlegger, but the one we're focusing on here is a detective. Honestly, a lot of the noir versions of heroes are detectives. But back then in the stories, everyone was a detective, so I'm fine with it. Either way, I personally think that narrative fits Wolverine's power set just a little bit better, being a skilled tracker himself. Jim in Wolverine Noir is part of Logan and Logan, a detective agency that boasts that they're the best there is at what we do. The whole look of the series is very creepy, very noir, and it also draws a lot on the backstory of Wolverine given to us in his origin series, where we learn of how he was mistreated as a boy, his relation addition to Dog and his childhood love and friend Rose. In this version of the story, Logan's father is a very religious preacher who often forces young Jim to sit and listen to his sermons while he rehearses them. Number 5. Old Man Logan. Definitely one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine out there when it comes to the reality in which he resides. Old Man Logan hails from the alternate reality of Earth 807128. In this reality, it was Wolverine himself who was responsible for the death of the X-Men, as he was tricked by Mysterio into slaughtering all of them when the villains took over and ended up finally winning the day. Flash forward to the future where Wolverine is old and he doesn't go by that codename anymore because, well, it brings back pretty painful memories, which he still is haunted by to this day. Instead, he's simply known as Logan. But even though he tries to stay away from heroics, retiring, and even settling down with a wife and kids, he can't seem to escape his vigilante ways. After his family are killed when he is late to pay forced protection money to the Hulk gang, Logan himself seeks revenge, inevitably and gruesomely freeing pretty much everyone from the villainous nature of deranged Pappy Banner and his inbred family. That Hulk gang. Oh boy. Number 4. Cancerverse Wolverine. We don't know that much about Cancerverse Wolverine, who hails from the Earth of 10011, but we do know, like many others who hail from this reality, Wolverine here is horrifying to behold, and he is part of the X-Men, spelt E-X-Men. In the Cancerverse, death was completely eradicated, which you might think would bring about a sort of paradise in the cosmos, but instead this change had, well, the opposite effect, mutating everything into one big horror show. Turns out death wasn't quite as bad as we all thought, and that life, left unchecked, is actually horrifying. Who would have guessed? Number 3. X-24. In the film Logan, X-24 was an even more deadly clone than X-23. This was a cloned version of Wolverine genetically engineered to be as powerful as Wolverine in his prime, perhaps even more so, and who was much more easy to control and manipulate. Not as free thinking and just more of a straight up berserker. So basically like Wolverine without any of his moral code at all, or any inhibitions. This made X-24 the perfect weapon to be used against Wolverine himself and escapee Laura, aka X-23. It took a lot to take down X-24, and his perceived strength and ruthlessness in the film made him a terrifying nemesis to watch. I don't know about you, but I got so anxious every time he showed up on screen in that initial watch through of Logan. Even when I rewatch it now, I'm like, Logan, no, X-24's coming for you, run! Number 2. Lord of the Vampires. This alternate version of Wolverine comes to us from the What If series Volume 2, issue 24. Here the fate of the world was forever changed when, during the X-Men's battle with Dracula, Storm ultimately decided to remain with Dracula. This changed the course of history forever, as Wolverine and the other heroes were captured and transformed into vampires themselves. However, Wolverine's willpower proved much too strong for Dracula to tame or control, and so he was challenged and later defeated by Wolverine, who then became the new Lord of the Vampires. What's scarier than a Terminator-style clone version of Wolverine? How about a vampire version of Wolverine who rules over all of the other vampires and can turn anyone into his loyal thrall? Number 1. Zombieverse Wolverine. Actually, I feel a little bad that I put the zombies above the vampires in this list, but here we are. I don't know how, but I almost actually forgot to mention Zombieverse Wolverine on this list. I guess maybe it's just because I'm so fixated on vampires, which I guess makes sense. But it's really shocking considering how emotionally scarring and overall how terrifying I find the Zombieverse in Marvel to be. It's just a real horror show over there. Over on Earth Z or Earth 2149, Wolverine isn't just any old zombie either, but becomes one of the zombie cosmic or zombie galacti, after he and a group of chosen few fight over and successfully devour Galactus's remains. For a long time, this granted zombie Wolverine the power cosmic, so not only was he now a terrifying member of the undead with Wolverine's killer instincts and fighting prowess, but then he also had the power cosmic on top of that.